Over to David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done, Anoop. I'm going to invite everyone, if you want, stand up because that was pretty tough. Shake out and then sit down. And there's one spare seat here if anybody wants it. So who's here that wants to save costs?
Yeah.
Oh, 5 people, that's good. I'm in the right place. Saving costs is very easy. I'm going to go through some ideas that I come up with. So you can read a little bit about me. I'm going to summarise this slide in 2 statements. I learned a hell of a lot about cost optimisation in 5 years as Cloud Infrastructure Manager at Boral. I'm not there any longer, but I've got a lot of information that I've presented before, so it's all okay. Feel free to take photos. The other thing I'll summarise on this photo is, with that photo, that's the haircut you get if you go to Turkey and you're going to get married in Turkey. You don't speak Turkish and the barber doesn't speak English. That's what happens. My number 1 tip, this is the best thing that you can do, tagging. From the very first day that AWS entered Boral's offices, my eyes lit up at the opportunities. And we were able to implement auto shutdown, backup rates, but it also informs all your decisions for automation and decisions to remove or anything you want to do in the cloud when you have enough data. The next thing when you're approaching cost optimization is to follow a trusted sequence. Because if you do these steps in a different sequence, you won't realize the benefit that you might be able to. There's no point implementing reserved instances or savings plans until you've turned off and terminated what you didn't need. Because once you enter a savings plan, you're locked in for that period, be it 1 year or 3 years. So it's very important to have a plan before you start and follow a sequence. Number 3 tip is you have to be watching your costs all the time. When we first started migrating into AWS, there was one particular team that was trying all these funky things, all these new services. And because I'd implemented a daily report to me, I saw that spike. And I went and spoke to them the next day. Oh, we're sorry, we didn't know, we didn't realise. So that's about education. Once they knew, they were looking closer. There was still a little bit more work that they had to do while they were trying to implement the business application they needed to implement, but they were watching it more closely. And by educating all the teams that are consuming your cloud resources, that's how you keep things on track. Sandpit. So we set up some Sandpit accounts so that people could try things. But all the discussions that I had with people, encouraging them to terminate old instances, old resources in those Sandpit accounts, fell on deaf ears. They forgot. So what I did, I got my team to write a script that ran every Monday and then terminated anything older than 30 days out of the Sandpit account. And then those costs came down. I communicated to all the teams so they were aware of the rules, and once people are aware, there can't be any complaints. Sometimes people lost stuff that they were working on. Mate, I told you what it was. You have to have tough love if you really want to save costs. And I really wanted to save costs. RDS connections. So Anoop talked about some of the tools. So we used a combination of the native tools from AWS, some commercial tools. Initially it was a product from Versant, and then it was Cloud Health. But what the native tools and the commercial tools can't tell you, there's lots of things they can't tell you easily. I knew that people weren't utilising some of these resources, and RDS was a big cost. So I asked my team to write a script that would find out the number of connections every hour of every day for the entire week for every RDS instance. And this is just 2 instances here. All those zeros mean there were no connections. So then what I did is I just highlighted an area which I thought would be reasonable for them to have the RDS instance powered on. You can see they were never used on weekends. They were never used before 8 a.m. They were never used after 7 p.m. So when I put that in front of the product owner and the subject matter expert for the application, they couldn't really argue. So getting the data is key to saving costs. And that's why Anoop said it's easy. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. You just have to have a methodical approach to it. And that saved, in those two instances, dropped the cost for those resources by 64%. Those two instances, they were in the same application family. So then it made sense, given the low number of connections, we put them on the same RDS instance. So where we just saved 64%, we're now saving a further 50% of that cost by combining the two. The only drawback for that is if you need to shut down the instance, both of those application components are going to be unavailable. Once we applied RDS power scheduling, we did it through a tagging regime. So here's our tagging ideas and the number of instances. After we did it, our entire RDS cost came down by 20%. It takes a little bit of investment up front to get that infrastructure in place. We just did that with internal resources, writing the right scripts, making the tags available. Then we could sit down with product teams to adjust those tag values. And I get a daily report of all the tags, so I knew what was changing. We could just sit down with them, help them understand, go back and say, hey, we think you should do this, we think you should do that. But when you make large savings, it is worth the effort. Anoop talked about provisional IOPS. We had assistance to migrate over 1,000 servers out of traditional data centers into AWS. And what I noticed quickly, that provisional IOPS cost was very high, but none of the commercial reports really told us exactly the detail. So again, I got my team to write a script that gave me a report that showed me for each of the volumes, around about 1,200 volumes I think there was, the configured provision IOPS and the consumed provision IOPS. And when I saw that over a couple of weeks, a couple of months, it was clear to me we didn't need provision IOPS. So we dropped it in a non-prod, just in one weekend, we just deleted it. We monitored that for a period of time. When we were satisfied that there were no adverse impacts, then we went through the normal change procedure and we started to remove them out of prod. All that purple there is the cost that we removed. Provision IOPS, gone, not needed. There are other techniques you can use if the provision IOPS is close. Just by increasing the size of the volume, you get, is it three IOPS per gig or something like that. Yeah, so that there's lots of little techniques you can use to avoid problems, and there's very easy techniques to avoid cost. Creative communications. One of the biggest things I felt as a challenge in saving cost was convincing all the stakeholders to make changes. And I'd have discussions, I'd give them reports, and nothing was really having the impact that I needed. And one night before a management meeting, a bit like about the size of this, I was going to have the opportunity to present a little bit about cost optimisation. And I had this light bulb, and I produced this chart. And when I put that up and showed people what it meant in real terms, instead of being in an email, instead of being in a normal Excel, this picture helped people understand and join the journey. So when words don't work, think about using a picture. Take a photo of this, you can use it. There's no copyright. Another thing, I picked up this idea from a seminar I went to with AWS, and that was to create competition. And what I started to do is I started to issue a weekly report to a bunch of the stakeholders. And for each team, I was just nominating how many of their non-prod instances they'd applied a auto shutdown tag. So where it wasn't running 24/7. And people started coming to, oh, David, I'm on the bottom, how do I get up? Like, well, just come and ask one of the team. I'll get one of my team guys to come and sit with you, help you add a few tags. And it became a competition, and they were busting to get higher on the list. No one wanted to be at the bottom. So that's a way that you can help. So having champions in the organisation is really going to help. Certainly in our case it helped, and I'm sure it will help for a lot of you here today. I went to my team and said, right, I want something that automatically tags new instances. So this script ran every night, and if it found something that wasn't yet tagged, it applied all the tags and then had specific tags that we wanted to be applied. So the backup rate, so no backups until they really start using it. I don't want to pay for backups for something that's not being used yet. And we had a tag for that determined the frequency that would help in cost. And we'd have this schedule, WW 1100, 1300. What we used that for was every week on Wednesday, the instance would turn on at 11 a.m. and turn off at 1 p.m. That allowed instances to maintain domain trust and to get driver updates, etc., etc. And it was in the middle of the day, so if something went wrong, we have plenty of staff there. I didn't want to do it overnight. That just made it easy. We also had some automation that then populated a tag that told us who created the resource and when they created the resource. So that when I'm going to follow up somebody with a question, hang on, it's been here 3 months, you haven't done anything with it, let's get rid of it. Yeah, there's other ways we can, why are we paying for this? I love this slide. This is the piece de resistance. So at a point in time, we had 558 instances. If we allowed 558 instances to run 24/7, we would consume 93,744 hours of compute time. Let me repeat that, 93,744 hours of compute time. With the auto shutdown that we had and the tags, we saved 43,000 compute hours per week. We saved the cost associated with 43 hours of compute time per week. So if you have a lot of resources, small changes can make a big impact. A big impact. EC2 costs were the biggest costs in our portfolio. It's going to vary by organisation depending on what type of resources you have implemented. We were able to reduce our EC2 costs by 37% by implementing auto shutdown and a tagging regime. And it becomes, once you've got that regime implemented, it's very simple to maintain it. And it's just conversations every now and again, looking at the data, talking to people, getting them to see the light. Savings plan. So as I said, you've got to have a trusted sequence once you've done a bunch of stuff. And I just put a snippet of some of the things that we were able to do. There are hundreds of things you can do to save costs. These are just a few. Once we've done a lot of these, that's when we commit to a savings plan. And with AWS, all you have to do, once you know your 24/7 resources, you know how many hours per day they're going to consume, you just commit to the number, and AWS is going to give you a discount because you've made that commitment. You're going to get charged whether you use it or not, so make sure that it's the right number. But once you've done that, and you can get a reward of 10 to 30%. In our case, the overall discount that we got was 16% on top of the cost that we'd already saved. We were able to take $1 million US per annum out of our cost by those cost reduction techniques. It's very easy to do. You just need a champion, you need a process, you need to have the data, you need a good tech guy that can implement your ideas. That's one thing you do need. There's a summary of what we've covered today. The biggest advice I can give to you is find a champion and get them to create more champions in your organisation. Just do little things.
The other thing I was going to say, you're sort of raising a consciousness of
Absolutely.
Cost savings, right?
Yes.
Yes, it's about gamification and getting people, but it forces them to think. As you said, you're catching them out. Even if they are going, how do I get around that resource? They're actively thinking about, crap, I'm going to have to watch the money because I'm going to get caught if I'm not careful.
Absolutely.
Right? Which is a good mentality, right?
Yeah. But it's really about changing people's perspective. We come out of a data center environment where the rules are a lot different.
Yeah.
And it took people a long time to get the mindset. So a big part of a champion is to come up with those ideas and ways to influence people to make the necessary changes. I'm just worried about underutilisation. That was my key driver. And that was the key way that I went and approached people with data. Here is the data. This resource is underutilised. The centralised cloud team built the infrastructure that made sure every new instance had a raft of tags where we could, through automation, populate that tag yes. Where we couldn't, I sat down at the beginning when we didn't do it early enough. I wish I'd done it right from the beginning. Didn't know what we didn't know at that stage. So I would sit down with a big spreadsheet and say, right, here is 20 resources in your patch. Tell me what these values should be. And we might focus on 1 or 2 columns to start with. And then we had a tool to just upload that spreadsheet that populated. So
you would meet with the guys,
individual teams.
Individual teams using those AWS accounts, work out what the
and even the time through COVID, right, because we're all online,
yep.
I had my background had this tag, tagline, please update your tags. So every time they were talking to me, every meeting I was in, please update your tags. And it became a joke, right, but it was this subliminal message that was telling people. And I was saying to my managers, I was saying to the CIO, we need tagging to enable automation. We need tagging to save costs. They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So we had entered into an enterprise discount program with AWS, and that meant we got a solution architect assigned and a technical account manager. I would meet with them monthly, and they would come up with some ideas and things that they could see as well that would sort of spur me to go look in more detail. So that was helpful. They've always been trying to help people to save costs.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.